Hello and welcome to Women in Workforce, a series celebrating capital area workforce development. I'm Carrie Rosingana and I'm the CEO at Capital Area Michigan Works here in the greater Lansing region. I'll be your host as we bring together women in positions of leadership to shine a spotlight on their workforce impacts while also talking about and addressing some disparities and challenges that are unique to women in workforce.
And I am Kate Snyder. I'm the CEO at Piper & Gold Public Relations here in the Lansing area, and I'll be joining Carrie each episode as co-host. And after decades of friendship and working alongside each other in workforce development, Carrie and I wanted to create this series to really highlight the contributions of women in our region's workforce, as well as help people better understand the role women in our workforce are playing in workforce development as a whole. But we also wanted to create a platform for discussion unique to the disparities that women face every day professionally, and also unique to the being in positions of leadership as women.
So every episode, we'll host a roundtable style discussion with fellow community leaders. And today we're gathered at Risky Studios in East Lansing, Michigan, and we're so grateful that you've chosen to join us. So let's dive in.
Okay, you ready?
Ready.
Our first segment, since we know that when amazing female leaders get together, the intros and bios alone could take up a whole episode. So we are going to call this what it is. This could be a whole episode, which is why instead of doing full bios, full introductions, we're asking each of you to introduce yourselves by summing up your professional biography in one sentence. So, what is your professional biography in just one sentence? And then we're asking each of you to share another single sentence about what you want people to know or understand behind the bio that we couldn't read in that bio, because we do want to normalize being human beings as leaders. So what is it that people wouldn't know about you from your biography?
So I'll give you an example just to kind of get us started. My one-word bio is I am someone who is passionately dedicated to all things workforce development. It's been my career since 2007, and it's something that I personally see the impacts of in our region every single day. And something that's a little bit behind my bio is I grew up in northern Michigan, never had any plans to live in Greater Lansing, but I came here for MSU and to attend, and I fell in love with our region. And now I can't imagine living anywhere else. I really, really love this community, and I love the people who live here. And I'm really grateful to get to be a part of this work and this community here. So, first up, I get to do our first introduction. And first up, I get to welcome Angela Witwer, Michigan State Representative. So, Angela, I'd like to ask you to share your one sentence bio and then maybe something that's behind the bio that people might not know about you.
Do you get two sentences?
You can share.
We'll be honest, we're not going to cut you off.
I have worked in a local hospital for 22 years. I left there, opened up my own business, a very successful marketing and PR company, and decided to run for office for the 76th district, ran the campaign to win majority last term, and I am now the appropriations chair for the state of Michigan House of Representatives.
I love that story. What's something behind the bio that maybe people don't know about you?
I am a card-carrying, off-the-chart introvert that
Oh,
never, ever have thought in their wildest dreams that they would do something like running for office.
I resonate deeply with that as a fellow introvert who has to push myself to be out in front of people a lot.
same. What made you make that choice? Like what was it that spurred you to move past that introvertedness to run for office?
I was asked, and I have a hard time saying no. I'm learning how to do that now. And my business partner actually went with me, and my business partner is Lori. And Lori just said, "You've always cared about people. You've always wanted to see the best outcome. People come to you for advice all the time. You're a natural leader. I think you'd be great at this." So I took a chance, and it was it's not in my DNA to take a lot of risks either, but this is a huge risk and did it and it worked out.
My goodness.
It's brave.
That is so brave.
It's
And
brave.
it's, you know, it's so interesting to hear that you identify as an introvert and very risk averse because as an agency owner myself, like, you know, having followed your career throughout it, you know, I've always really appreciated and respected and admired you as a colleague. And then to hear you're like, oh, introvert, risk averse, I'm like, oh, yes, okay, that's great. Yes, thank you. It's okay for me to say that I'm an introvert and that I like don't want to talk to other human beings face to face and that
I would never have guessed you were an introvert, but I've taken every test to defy it because people think you fake it all day long and then you're exhausted at the end of the day.
That's
And
exactly it.
yeah.
Carrie and I have called the post show recording, we call it the hangover because we leave here and we're just drained emotionally, physically. And after one of the episodes, we were standing in the parking garage chatting. And as we were chatting, I was like, hey, I gotta go. The hangover's coming. Like, I gotta be able to drive home. It's about to hit. I'm gonna go from functional to just a blob on the couch in about 20 minutes. I need to get home.
Yeah.
It's just very, but people, when you can talk to people publicly, present, they don't always recognize that that's something introverts can do and have to do often because that's what society expects of leaders.
No, I took advice from a friend of mine, Kelly Rosman, and learned how to just fake it. And I am actually decent at it now. I wouldn't say I'm good. I'm decent. I can get by. Lori has painstakingly watched me practice, and it's awful. So I wouldn't recommend ever being a part of those sessions.
It's a skill like
It
any
is.
other professional skill. It really is. And it's something that we do societally project onto leaders is that leaders have to be loud in their leadership. And and so many of us have to force past that introvert barrier and learn that skill that may not come naturally.
Absolutely.
Okay, my turn. I get to like you can't be an introvert, are you? This can't
You
be.
know, there are days though,
Okay.
I get tired at
believe
the end of the
that.
day.
I-
If you're turned on all day and you go home, you crash.
It's true.
So
So I do get to introduce our next guest, Cindy Kangas from the Capital Area Manufacturing Council, the executive director, and super excited to have you here today. I actually mentioned in a previous meeting that we were in together that I was really excited because I felt like we didn't have a lot of representation from the manufacturing sector on this show so far, and I know that that's really important. So super excited to have you here. And with that, it's your turn for one sentence and what we don't see behind it.
Okay, so you already mentioned the Capital Area Manufacturing Council. We are a membership organization. We provide services to manufacturers in 5 counties: Ingham, Eaton, Clinton, Livingston, and Shiawassee. But behind that, I like to think of myself as kind of a modern day Rosie the Riveter.
That feels appropriate.
Yes.
The event.
I've gotten to know a lot of actual Rosies through my job, and we've kind of bonded and formed a kinship. And now I kind of see it as another one of my tasks, and that's to ensure that we're teaching the next generation of that talent pipeline, that STEM jobs and manufacturing and skilled trades are for women.
I love it. And I'll make a confession. I wanted so much to attend the Rosie the Riveter celebration that you hosted at, was it the Capitol or the Michigan Historical Museum, the Capitol? And Carrie actually was like, you want to go? Are you going? I was like, yeah. And then like that morning, she's like, you going? We going? We doing this? And I was like, I can't people today. Like, I can't people today. It's too much. I can't be around that many people today. I was like, have fun, take pictures. And then I saw the pictures and I was like, oh, I'm a little sad, but also not that's like, I couldn't people. And that's the stuff that people just don't guess. Like that some days you're like, oh, wow, that's the nope. I don't have the battery to make it through that.
There were a lot of people. There were over 700 people, so I get
A
it.
lot of
Yeah.
people. Like,
Yeah.
It was
Hey,
super cool.
I told Cindy after her event, I happened to go home and talk to my family and found out that my grandma was a Rosie.
No
No
way.
idea. And so I got pictures of her, and my daughter reads all of these Rosie Revere engineer books that are based on it. So when you say that you identify as a Rosie and knowing how my grandma was and my daughter is now, it totally suits you. You are just a firecracker who gets stuff done.
Mhm.
Hey, so most people probably have no idea. Well, not most, but some people may have no idea what we're talking about. Can you share what the Riveter like recognition event was? And
So I think most people have seen the posters, the iconic,
yes,
I can do it, she can do it, whatever. But Rosies are actually women that stepped up during World War I, but especially during World War II. Their husbands, their brothers, their fathers were overseas in the war. There was no one on the home front to operate farm machinery, operate factories, build war materials. And these women stepped up from all ways of life into the factories, and they just, making bombers, no big deal. They're literally riveting airplanes together. It's amazing. And they didn't, when the men came back from war, they just kind of, stepped back and let the men have all of the glory. And it wasn't until much later that we actually started celebrating the Rosies and their part in manufacturing and in World War II. So I'm really excited to be a part of it.
and what is the event that y'all
Every
that
March,
you were a part of?
every March 21st is Rosie the Riveter Day. So you don't have to worry if next March you feel like you can people. You can come to the Capitol lawn and
I'll plan a light day on the 20th, and I can
Yes.
people on the 21st.
so the goal is to celebrate the 5 generations of women in the workplace, but also to have
Cool.
Rosies that are still with us and their families to join us. So we had, 8 to 10 actual Rosies, and they're all right around 100. And people were taking pictures and they were sharing their stories. But other family members who, as Carrie mentioned, maybe their moms or grandmothers were doing something during the war. They were sharing their stories, and we were singing songs, and it was just a lovely day of celebrating our foremothers.
That's phenomenal.
Mhm.
Okay, let's get into I'm sorry, not sorry. Hashtag sorry, not sorry. I'm sad to have missed it.
You'll come
I'm
next year.
I'm glad I prioritized my own needs on that individual day. So let's talk about our next segment, which is the 5 questions. So we have 5 questions focused on disparities women face in the workplace, workforce development, your own career paths, and we ask a combination of these each episode. So we're going to talk through some combination of our 5 questions for you, and just kind of get your thoughts.
So the first question, and it's always the big one that we talk about, what do you think are the biggest challenges that are unique to women or that women face in the workforce today? And I'm happy to start from what my own personal perspective is still having representation at the table and around all tables. I think that there's still a lot of work to be done that will help to have that be more normalized, that women are at the table and are treated as equals in their space. So that's something that comes to mind for me. Either of you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say that actually, but I think it comes down to the word culture as well. Am I seeing people here that look like me, and am I feeling appreciated while I'm on the job? And in manufacturing skilled trades, we're really not seeing so much of that, but it's getting better.
Yeah.
Data thoroughly backs up everything you're saying.
Yes.
When you look at, the S&P 500 just topped this year 10% of the I think I can't remember if it was S&P 500 or Fortune 500, but just topped 10% of the CEOs are female. 10%. Is it 2023? Oh, yeah, it is. And then I was reading a recent study that looked at 244,000 interviews and profiles of leadership skills and evaluations. And it showed that by and large, female leaders had met or exceeded more organizational outcomes, and also led teams that were more satisfied. Like, it's the data shows there is real value in ensuring that women are represented at the table, and yet we still aren't. So thinking about it from that lens, what how would you challenge, or what should we ask of other women in positions of leadership to leverage those perspectives, experiences, access, power to be able to drive change and ensure we see greater representation?
I I think we need to be secure in our own selves
Mm.
first. So in your own leadership, I think we have been long time struggling to be able to get to the positions that we've been able to claw our way into. And so therefore it's tough for us to want anyone else to be there. So we need to support each other. And in my office, I have one sole lone man in my office, and I feel bad for him. And I have one lone son in a massive, huge family of girls. And we have to learn to be able to lift others up, and that comes with security in your own leadership and security in your own person to be able to let someone else come in and do the job you do and learn from you so that they can be the next generation or the next person that leads. And I do that on a daily basis. And if you hire good people, if you hire good women, they just make you look better because women work very hard, they're very smart, they're loyal, and it's a good thing all around. And we'll see more people then in leadership positions, more women in leadership positions.
Yeah, I'll second what you say. I kind of have this philosophy of coaching, teaching, and mentoring where you're always finding someone to coach and you're
Mhm.
always looking for someone to coach you. Even at a CEO level, you're staying hungry and then you're always turning around and looking behind you and seeing who you can pull up. But
Mhm.
I think that there's something to be said about looking at elementary school, middle school, high school girls and teachers and counselors, and what are they sharing with the next generation of the talent pipeline? Are they being taught that they can be CEOs? I think there's something to be said about sharing with young kids, like, you can be the future, you can be a part of STEM, you can be a CEO if you want to. And I don't know that we're doing a great job of that.
And even in schools, you'll see superintendents, or most of them are a lot of men.
Mhm.
And so when you see the leadership roles as you're growing up, being the principal is a man, the superintendent is a man. I'm fortunate in my district, I have a lot of women as superintendents, but when you are a young girl and you see your dad go to work and your mom may not, because if she made $50,000, 10% or 20% of that is how much it's going to cost to put you into daycare. And she may not be able to go to work because of that. So you don't even have that natural, seeing a natural woman being a leader, and the leader is in your home instead. So it's just really important to give kids those opportunities to be able to see that. I have four granddaughters. I just told all of you that. And I have my granddaughters come on the floor with me a lot to see it, and I've had them pick the bingo balls out to show where we sit and be able to see what it's like to have a gavel in their hands and be in charge.
I love what you said about that feeling safe and secure in your own role to elevate others. And I think that's something that we often overlook or don't shine enough of a spotlight in as it relates to disparities, is that there are so many women in positions where it's not just a feeling like they don't have the confidence to be safe and secure. They truly don't have the power or the privilege to be safe and secure in their positions. And so, in any ways in which we can support and provide safety, security, protection, risk mitigation for them, if we are in positions of safety and security, you know, helping address many of those disparities that people face, we can leverage some of our own privilege. But I also really like, I really appreciate what you were saying about how they're seeing women as leaders in the home, but we may not always talk about it that way. And I think there's so much value and power in even just changing the mindset and the um language surrounding that. Often we'll say like, well, being a full-time mom, being a stay-at-home mom is a full-time job. But like, it's a leadership position. And this notion of being a leader in the household, that there are skills running and managing a household and supervising your family that are very relevant in the workplace and vice versa. I think it would be really neat to see that language begin to shift so that we really can see and recognize, like, it's not just a job, it's a leadership position. And whether people are doing it by choice or because they don't have access to affordable care to pursue the career passions they have, it's still a really beautiful modeling of leadership that we should like respect and acknowledge.
Well, and I think it gets back to your point about the importance of showing younger generations and yours as well, Cindy, all of the options that are out there. If someone chooses to want to be home with their family, that is a good option if that is somebody's own choice. And that is, something to be respected and not to be looked down or demeaned. But I also think, like you, I have a young daughter who's 9. I bring her to my office and I walk her around and we talk to people about what their jobs are and their roles are so that she can see, even within one organization, there's so many different parts that exist that she could aspire to be. And she talks to people about what those opportunities look like. I'm sure your granddaughters, they talk about what they've seen with you when they come to the floor. Cindy, I know when you go to talk to students in the school district, you're talking to them and showing them those opportunities every day.
Yeah, I have this saying, you can't be what you can't see.
Yeah.
And so if they're not exposed to it, they don't even think about it.
Yep.
And the notion that because we are the ones that carry babies and we stay home with our babies, and that you have to take this time. You don't have to, but you need to take this time with these precious little beings that you have, makes you get set back in your career is insane to me.
Yeah.
We're dealing with some of the worst stress of your life when you have a baby, and to think that you can't go back and do your job that you've had your career set back because you have a child is, to me, just insane. So we need more leaders, and they don't have to be just women. We have a lot of great male leaders in the House of Representatives and around this town that really work with women, and you have to find the people and make sure that you're making a concerted effort to have women a part of your cabinet or a part of your circle of leadership in your business.
And you have to trust them to tell you what they need. When we see people making decisions for women, in terms of like, oh, well, let's not put her on that project because it requires a lot of travel and she's got young kids at home, or, oh, let's not give her too much on her plate as she's transitioning back from parental leave. Even if it's, women making those, thinking we're being helpful, like taking away someone's choice of what they want to jump back into and in what way and at what level, is not respecting and trusting that they'll let us know if, hey, pumping and flying suck. So I would prefer not to travel by plane for the next XYZ months. Like, okay, cool, but don't make that decision for the person.
Yeah,
Say,
absolutely.
hey, we're thinking about putting you on this project. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Oh, I think it'd be great for it. Whatever. Or yeah, oh man, pumping and flying, worst thing ever. Here's off. That's eventually why my kid got weaned. I had to be gone on a business trip I chose to be gone on a business trip for 6 days out to Seattle. And I was like, no, just know I am not dealing with that. He's 10 months old. He's big. He's fine. Feed him whatever we feed him, but I am not trying to figure that life out. So, letting people have those choices and not just making the decision for them. Let's transition because we are talking about kiddos. We have a segment that we call Facts and Feelings. So, I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, like, let's look at the facts, not feelings, or make decisions based on facts, not feelings. My therapist says it to me all the time. So, but we want to talk about facts and feelings because feelings are so stigmatized for women in the workplace. As a woman that doesn't often show my emotions, instead I just go down the rabbit hole of anxiety spirals on the inside. It's the facts, not feelings, being very helpful. We're often stigmatized for emotions, so we want to share some facts about women in the workforce and ask you to share with us how that makes you feel. And today we are talking about facts surrounding childcare challenges for women in the workplace. So here's the facts. The average cost of childcare in the United States is over $10,000 a year. And we know for many, and that would be for one child. We know it's significantly more in some areas. And also, many people have more than one child. And that makes it really difficult for people to afford quality care. Just in February of this year, 2023, in a study by Stanford, 39% of women with children younger than the age of 5 said they had quit their jobs or reduced their hours since the pandemic began. That quantity was up from 33% at the same time last year. So we are 3+ years out from the pandemic, and the number of women quitting their jobs or reducing their hours since the pandemic began is still climbing. And more than 90% of those women said they did so of their own accord, not because they were laid off or had their hours cut. Last year, that number was only 65% who had reduced their hours or quit due to business conditions, losing a job. This year, 90%. So,
What do you think?
Well,
He's like,
she's ready. She's ready. She's
I
ready.
also want to hear facts, and not that we can just, make up facts, but I think availability of childcare is huge. And if we don't have a grandmother or somebody next door, or a nanny or something, where are we even finding childcare if we can't afford it? I just think that there are so many pieces to this that need to be unpacked.
So many pieces.
I have a legislative director, and she's amazing. And she has a child, and she pays, I think, close to $15,000 a year. And there's this thing going around called COVID. And anytime that they have an exposure,
Yes.
they're off. There are things that are happening now that didn't happen 100 years ago when I had kids, called they get vacations at daycare centers now. So you're paying $15,000, and they actually shut down for planning days and stuff that never happened before. And so she struggles. And you talked about facts and feelings. She works for somebody who totally understands. I was a single mom, and Lori was my mentor, and Lori is actually probably the best boss, leader, person I've ever met. And it was, do your job. I don't care how you get it done, do your job. And so I have learned that from her, secure in my own leading. And Sophia, she does her job, but the other thing is feelings.
Yes.
And so feelings wise, she has to deal with the feelings that she's not there. And that bothers her more than it bothers anyone else in the office. Plus, it is partially your social life when you're a parent or a mom, too. You draw a lot of your social adult interactions are at work. And so she misses it, too. So on top of the fact that she barely can afford this, she has to miss because of various different things. She feels bad. And then the fact is there aren't enough daycares. Cindy's right. We're at the state level funding different things. We're funding training for new home daycares because we need them so badly.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't find them. You're worried about having them there, and there's all kinds of barriers to it. So we have a real crisis in our country. We need the workers. We luckily are at the lowest unemployment rate, but there's no one else to get for these jobs because there are nobody else they don't want to come in right now because they either can't get daycare, they can't afford to come in. It costs more to go in than it does to stay home. And so we have a crisis that we're trying to solve at the state level with different programs, but it's not the only thing we need to look at.
I'm grateful that the state is looking into some of those resources because I was an early childhood educator before I did workforce development. I taught in an accredited center. And I feel really fortunate. I'm working with the Pre-K for All Action team now because it is something that it's going to take everybody being a part of trying to figure out the solution for this. I have a 9-year-old, she goes to summer camp, and this year she ages out of the summer camp that
Oh,
she's been
man.
a part of. And when I heard that, I already have anxiety. Like, what am I going to do next year? How am I going to do this? What if I can't get into the one that has before and after care because I have meetings that start at 7:30 in the morning. It is a real feeling that a lot of leaders are dealing with right now, or someone on their team is dealing with. And I think oftentimes you hear about it more from your women circle that you're a part of because a lot of us talk about it and normalize those conversations a bit. But it is something that is facing all people, and it's a family challenge, and it's not getting better. And I do think the cost is a huge part of that. I mean, if you're paying on average $10,000 for one child, at a certain point, I'm sure people are looking at it just from a budget and numbers standpoint. At what point is it better to save the cost that you'd be paying for childcare and and leave the workforce for a while? And
And
that's
if
a
you
horrible choice.
if you talk to districts too, school districts also, you'll find out how young kids are that are latchkey
Yes.
Yeah.
also, because it is a
Mhm.
real issue that kids can't get daycare, parents can't afford it. They can't afford to quit their job, but they can't afford the daycare. So there are young 5-year-olds that
Mhm.
are latchkey kids
It's heartbreaking.
now.
Also, one of the things Carrie and I bonded over the years is our shared backgrounds with early childhood education. My mom ran a school district's early childhood education programs, and every summer in latter high school and college, I went and worked in those programs. And the same workforce challenges that all employers are facing right now, the talent shortages, increasing wages, increasing inflation, costs as a whole, childcares are also facing. And yet, having been a child care worker myself, part of that shortage is the workforce shortage, right? Because I've always been very passionate about the fact that we are entrusting our most precious little people
Mm.
to people who often couldn't afford to send their own precious little people to that place if they were doing it solely on their wages. We're often paying them below a living wage or, below something that they can sustain a family on, whether that's 9, 10, $11 an hour and expecting so much. That's an exhausting job. And then to turn around and go home and care for your own family at the end of the day too. And so, the workforce shortages and the access issues that's creating, and these positions are disproportionately filled by women, right? These very low wage, but not by any means low skill
Yeah.
positions are primarily filled by women. So it's no wonder we have these, horrible shortages. Like, how else are you can't drive the cost up even more. It's just this really complicated, deep issue that affects so much of our economic success as a country, as a state, and then individuals' success within families.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for the work that Cindy does because if you think about the careers that are traditionally women, teachers, school teachers, or I'm sorry, nurses, social workers,
Yeah.
nurse aides, the people that take care of us at our end of our lives, they're all paid terrible. Our society, our culture in America has not honored these these careers that are so necessary for everyone's future, they're there for us at our hardest time. And so the work that Cindy has done has been so needed so that young girls, young people can understand there are different routes, but we have shortages then on these important jobs that we need right now.
Well, and I know, Cindy, you and I, before we even started, you were talking about some employers that you met with recently who wanted to add a shift. And it's a third shift that's overnight. There's
There's no daycare.
there's no daycares that operate overnight. And then again, I wonder, so how's that going to work? And who's going to be more disproportionately affected potentially? And so it is all tied to workforce.
I can see not wanting to go in and say, I've got kids or I may have daycare needs and having, someone in HR think, oh, this person is a risk. I would rather just, stay home even if I thought I could make it happen.
Exactly.
It's a lot to ask.
It is a lot to ask. It is.
So on that front, I wish we could solve the childcare crisis today. And frankly, the what you were saying about it, I almost wonder sometimes, is it just that we assume that women should care for others? And so that's why we've so thoroughly devalued those positions, right? Because that's just what we should do for free. And I guess we have to pay you, but it's, not going to be a lot. And it just, it is so complicated and so deep. And yet the impacts are so widespread. So we could talk about this forever. I wish we could solve all the world's problems today, but we're not going to.
But we're going to keep working on it, though.
We will keep working on it. So when we think about that aspect and continuing to work on it, I would love for the two of you to take a few seconds to think about your biggest takeaways and what you hope either people will take away from today's conversation or what you yourself are going to take away from today's conversation. And while you're thinking about those, Carrie's going to share a little bit as well. And then we'll have you share kind of 10-ish words of what either you're taking away or what you hope others will take away.
Yeah. So while everybody's working, or all three of you are thinking about those words or what impacted you from today's conversation, I just want to thank everybody who's listening for being a part of the conversation. And hopefully all of you will carry things back to your life from the dialogue that we had here today. And I also really want to thank both of you for being vulnerable and being willing to sit down with Kate and I and talk about things that we feel are really important for us to normalize and to continue talking about. The more we talk about things like this, I always have a hope that we'll be more action oriented in the future to address some of these challenges. So, Cindy, thank you so much for joining us, Executive Director from the Capital Area Manufacturing Council. Angela, so glad that you could join us today, even though I know you're introverted. Your words have such meaning, and I'm so grateful that you were brave enough to come and be with us today. So, thank you as well for your service as our Michigan State Representative. So I will share, I'll start with what immediately kind of hit me about today's conversation. And to me, it was all about community. So when I have both of you on the couch with us today, you are representatives and leaders of this community. And I think that people who listen to both of you can be inspired about what changes are possible here, but also outside of our three counties too. So I appreciate all that you do for the community, and I really appreciate you being here.
I echo those sentiments of gratitude. As I think about what you've both shared today and the dialogue, I'm struck by how complicated, all of this is, and that it's really hard, but we have to try and to maintain that hope and belief that there are actual actions and solutions. When we look at, there are policy solutions, there are private sector solutions, there are truly things that can be done, even if these things at times can feel so big that they're insurmountable. So that's my big takeaway today, and I hope others can take that away too. Love to hear yours. What are your big takeaways?
We're not giving words.
You can give 10
You can
words.
take whatever you want.
I'm taking my 10 words. I just think the conversations that we've had today show that it's totally cool to care for people and still be a great leader.
Yes.
And with that comes confidence. And if you don't have it in a day, I tell this to my kids all the time. One of them just called me while I was sitting here. Muscle through it. And I use it's weird because I'm not an alcoholic, but I'm going to use an alcoholic term. Fake it till you make it. Because sometimes you just have to fake it and feel comfortable on a couch when you don't want to be in front of a camera. And then plot your legacy, because you sometimes you don't know it when you're doing it, but then you get there and you're like, okay, I've actually left something so that the path, like I can see Cindy's already forming. She's forming all these paths for all these kids that are lost in school and teaching them. And be patient. People don't always say the correct thing. They may say you look pretty and they really mean it, and they mean it as a compliment. They don't mean it as anything more. And I also share this with my kids. Be patient with people. We're humans. We say clunky things, we do clunky things. It doesn't mean we're awful. And so, life's messy, but at the end of life, it's what matters really is caring. And women are natural carers and natural people who love each other. And there's nothing wrong with loving each other and having fun while you're doing it.
Wow. Beat that. Beat that.
Our natural cares.
I unclicked my pen.
And
Well,
that's the mic drop.
no, I was telling Carrie this beforehand. I don't even have to think, because I always end every speech, every interview I do saying the same exact thing. And I always tell people that I want them to walk away from me as an influencer. I want them to go and talk to the next generation of the talent pipeline and tell young men, but especially young women, that STEM is cool, that there are manufacturing and skilled trade jobs available for them, that they may not have been shown, but they should be. They should be considering those things.
I love it. It's the
Yeah.
Steve Jobs outfit version of a closing. Always.
Yeah,
If you
people
keep-
know.
Yeah.
Stop asking her to speak. She keeps saying the same thing. But
It
listen, we need these. We need you. We need people in skilled trades. We
It's
need
true.
them.
Well, we still have to keep saying it because we have to be patient. Change takes time. And, oftentimes we have to acknowledge that, like, correction or pointing out a difference of opinion isn't conflict. Things like this aren't setting conflict. And so when we can have patience and caring and yet still help people to understand, hey, that is a common misconception. In actuality, women can be engineers.
Right.
It has to be repeated over and over and over. Change is very slow, and we have to be patient to help it get there.
Yeah, that narrative we have to change.
Yeah. And it's so odd that so many people are so hesitant because, being Michiganders, how many of us come from manufacturing families?
It's in our DNA.
Right. And
honestly.
I mean, I come from a manufacturing family, my, motor wheel family, dad's whole family, my mom's family is Illinois, so not as much, but, my dad's whole family was a motor wheel family. My dad's a lifelong manufacturing worker. My brother's in manufacturing. My husband is a mechanical engineer at a manufacturer. It is so much in our DNA, and yet some of those, notice every single one of those I just mentioned were all male. And every one of the ones I'm referencing that I didn't mention by gender, yeah, those are male too.
Mhm.
So, even for those of us that should know it,
Yeah.
and it should just be second nature, sometimes it's not. So repetition is good.
It is.
Okay. And with that, I get to wrap us up.
You do.
So, on that note, I want to say thank you again, Madam Chair. We have had the privilege of getting to call you Angela today, which is, I'm sure, will upset some people, but it really is wonderful to get to see you as a human in addition to your elected position that you hold. And thank you for your service. Huge thank you, Cindy, as always, for representing and helping ensure that we do get that repetition of the importance of STEM exploration for women in the workforce. So, on that note, I'm Kate Snyder. I'm the CEO of Piper and Gold Public Relations here in Lansing.
And I'm Carrie Rosingana, CEO of Capital Area Michigan Works, also here in Greater Lansing area. We can't wait to welcome a new batch of guests in the future, and thanks again for joining us today.